When you think of pirates, you imagine battles, cannon fire, and stolen treasure. But what happened after the fight was over? The answer might surprise you. Pirates were some of the wildest partiers in history. After weeks of brutal raids, storms, and hunger, when a crew finally struck gold, they celebrated like there was no tomorrow. They drank rum by the gallon, feasted on stolen food, sang shanties until their voices broke, and danced wildly on creaking decks until dawn. But these weren't ordinary parties. Pirate celebrations were explosive, chaotic, and often terrifying. They mixed joy with violence, laughter with bloodshed. For pirates, every party could be their last, and that's exactly how they lived it. In this documentary, we'll reveal the untold secrets of pirate parties, the feasts and drinks that fueled their madness, the music and dancing that shook their ships, the gambling and dangerous games they played, and the dark side, how these parties often ended in betrayal, brawls, and death. This is the wild truth about pirate parties, a world where freedom, excess, and violence collided on the high seas. Forget Hollywood myths. The real pirate party was far stranger, far wilder, and far deadlier than you could ever imagine. Pirates didn't party just for fun. They partied because they had to. Life at sea was brutal. Weeks of storms, hunger, and violence broke down even the toughest men. Every raid could be their last, every sunrise a gamble. So when fortune smiled on them, when they captured treasure, supplies, or rum, they celebrated like it was the end of the world. For pirates, these wild parties were more than drunken chaos. They were acts of freedom. Remember, most pirates had once been sailors under cruel captains, starved and beaten by naval officers or merchants. On pirate ships, discipline was still harsh, but the parties gave them a rare taste of liberty. For a few hours, nobody was a servant. Nobody bowed to kings or navies. Everyone was equal in their madness. They also partied to spend their loot. Pirates knew wealth wouldn't last. Gold slipped through their fingers faster than seawater. Some drank it away in one night. Others gambled it on dice or spent it on musicians, women, or feasts. Tomorrow they might die in battle, so tonight they lived without limits. And in truth, these celebrations also strengthened the crew. Sharing food, drink, and laughter built loyalty. In the chaos of rum and song, pirates became brothers, bound not by law, but by the wildness of the life they chose. That's why pirate parties weren't just entertainment. They were survival, emotional fire in a world of cold steel and cannon smoke. If there was one thing at the heart of every pirate party, it was rum. Barrels of it, stolen from merchant ships, flowed across the deck. Pirates drank it straight or mixed it with water and lime into a concoction called grog. It burned their throats, numbed their pain, and sent their voices roaring into the night. Food was just as wild. After weeks of surviving on stale biscuits crawling with weevils, a real feast felt like heaven. When pirates raided coastal towns or fat merchant vessels, they stole livestock, sacks of grain, fresh fruit, and spices. At parties, whole pigs were roasted over open flames, fish grilled on spits, and bread baked right on the ship's deck in iron ovens. Sometimes the meals were extravagant, stolen delicacies like wine, sugar, or even chocolate if fortune favored them. But most often it was greasy, smoky, and overflowing. Pirates weren't picky. They devoured whatever they could grab, tearing meat with dirty hands and teeth. And the drinking never stopped. Mugs clashed, rum spilled, and men collapsed in laughter or unconsciousness. By midnight, half the crew might be passed out, while the rest sang louder than the waves. But the food and drink weren't just about indulgence. They were symbols of victory, proof that the raid had succeeded, that the crew had survived another storm, another battle. Eating and drinking together reminded them why they risked their lives for freedom and for nights like this. At a pirate party, the feast was more than a meal. It was a declaration, we are alive. Tonight we are kings. A pirate party wasn't quiet. It was thunder, laughter, and music shaking the ship until dawn. Pirates sang sea shanties. Work songs turned into drunken anthems. Voices roared in unison, echoing across the waves like ghostly choirs. Each verse carried stories of stormy seas, battles, and women waiting in distant ports. Instruments were crude but powerful. Fiddles screeched, drums pounded on overturned barrels, flutes whistled, and sometimes even bagpipes howled in the night. Pirates made music with whatever they had, spoons, knives, even stamping boots on wooden planks. Dancing was wild and unrestrained. Forget polished ballroom steps. Pirates leapt onto tables, stomped the deck, and spun until they collapsed. Some locked arms in circles, spinning faster and faster, while others danced solo, kicking and shouting. And the music wasn't just entertainment, it was release. After endless days of silence, broken only by crashing waves, these bursts of noise reminded pirates they were alive. It built unity, lifting morale, welding men together in song and rhythm. But like everything at a pirate party, the music could shift suddenly. A joyful song could turn into a brawl if someone mocked another's dance, or if a drunk fiddler hit the wrong note at the wrong time. Chaos was always a heartbeat away. Still, for those few hours, with drums pounding and shanties shaking the night sky, pirates weren't just outlaws. They were kings of their own carnival, ruling the seas with laughter and song. Pirate parties weren't just about food, drink, and song. They were about risk. Pirates lived on danger, and when the cannons fell silent, they found thrills in games and gambling. Dice and cards were the most common. Crews threw dice across barrels or played card games under lantern light, betting gold coins, daggers, or even pieces of stolen treasure. Some wagered their weapons, others their shares of plunder. A few desperate men even gambled away their clothes. But pirates craved more than chance. They invented brutal contests to prove strength and courage. Arm wrestling on barrels, knife throwing into wooden posts, or wrestling matches in the sand. Losers were mocked. Winners cheered like heroes. Some games turned deadly. Drunken duels with pistols or cutlasses weren't uncommon, sparked by accusations of cheating or insults shouted in jest. A roll of the dice could end in spilled blood. Yet for pirates, this chaos was part of the thrill. Every game, every gamble, was another reminder that life was short and death was close. Winning meant more than gold. It meant pride, status, and respect in the crew. And just like their raids, pirate gambling was never fair. Cheating was rampant, and catching a cheat often ended with steel drawn. So when pirates weren't raiding ships, they gambled like devils, laughing, fighting, and risking it all for one more moment of glory. Pirate parties were wild, but they were also dangerous. The same rum that fueled laughter also lit the spark of violence. It often began with a joke gone too far or a drunken insult shouted across the deck. Two pirates might start with shoving, then fists, then knives. Within seconds, the celebration could explode into a brawl. Blood spilled as easily as rum. Tankards smashed over skulls, daggers flashed in torchlight, and bodies tumbled into the sea. Some fights ended quickly. Others left corpses sprawled across the deck while the music played on. Betrayal was another shadow at these parties. Drunken arguments about shares of treasure often turned deadly. A man who accused another of cheating at dice or stealing extra rum might not live to see the morning. Even pirate captains weren't safe. Some were stabbed in their sleep after a night of drunken feasting. For crews bound by fragile loyalty, one violent party could shatter everything. And yet the pirates accepted this risk. They knew that their freedom came with danger. A party could end in laughter or in death. Either way, it was proof of their way of life. Chaotic, unpredictable, and soaked in both joy and blood. For outsiders, pirate parties seemed like madness. For pirates themselves, they were the raw truth of their world. Freedom without limits and consequences without mercy. Pirate parties were more than celebrations. They were a way of life, raw, chaotic, and unforgettable. They feasted on stolen food, drank rivers of rum, sang until their voices broke, and danced until the deck shook beneath them. They gambled, fought, and sometimes even killed each other. For pirates, every party was a gamble with fate. Laughter one moment, blood the next. But this chaos left behind a legacy. The image of pirates as rowdy, drunken revelers spread through tavern tales, sailor songs, and eventually into books, plays, and films. Even today, when we picture pirates, we imagine barrels of rum, wild dancing, and brawls under the black flag. In truth, these parties weren't just for pleasure. They were survival, rebellion, and freedom rolled into one. Every time pirates raised their mugs and sang into the night, they were declaring to the world, "We live by no man's law but our own." That's the wild truth about pirate parties. They weren't pretty, they weren't safe, but they were unforgettable. And maybe that's why, centuries later, the echoes of their laughter, their songs, and their fights still roll across the seas. So the next time you hear the crash of waves or the creak of an old wooden ship, ask yourself, are those just the sounds of the ocean? Or are they the ghosts of pirates still partying in the dark?